everybody, welcome to the Man Alone solo role-playing YouTube channel. I'm your host, Man Alone, and today we're going to do some solo play. Actually, hang on just a minute. This is future Man Alone, and I just wanted to pop in early in the video to clarify what this video is going to be, because I'm recording this about 20 hours after I started recording that other one. And what happens in this video is my original plan is to just get right into solo play, which I know that there are literally dozens, if not 9 of you that are looking forward here to a 6-hour video of me solo playing this game. However, as I prepare for the game, there's a lot that starts going on in the back of my head about modifications and updates that would make this game more of a gratifying solo play experience. And so the solo play in this video will likely be going through some of the mechanics in this game to see how we can add, modify, subtract in order to create a more satisfying solo play experience. So from an actual solo play standpoint, while it's not going to have that beautiful bean footage of me just solo playing as much, there is likely to be me going through some paces of solo play to try out some different mechanics. I think from a standpoint of those of you who actually wish to play this game or solo play this game, I think this is going to be a very interesting video for you to watch, because I'm going to, in real time, as much as is possible, update this game and modify it so that it brings out its full solo play potential. Okay, so I just wanted to add that up front so there was no feeling of like false advertising, even though I'm sure the title, whatever I come up with, will be pretty specific about this. But anyways, we can get back to it. I'm about to make some real great jokes in my opening monologue. I mean, like at passing grade as far as these jokes go. Like C-, D+. Okay. Of a game that I honestly can't believe it's taken me this long to do an episode on this. If you can't tell from the vocal crispiness around the edges, I am recovering from a 4-day bout of pneumonia, and very happy to be doing better. But when I was in the thick of it, like the worst part of it, I had a pretty high fever, and I was having this nightmare that I think is a universal experience. Actually, now that I'm saying it, I'm wondering if I've always assumed this was a universal experience, but you tell me, where you wake up with a fever, you're really thirsty, you go get a glass of water, and as you're filling it or bringing it to your lips, you suddenly realize you're dreaming. And then you are like, oh, and you go get another glass of water, but then you realize you're still dreaming. And then you wake up and get another, and it just kept over and over and over again. That's happened to other people, right? I'm not the only one. I don't know why I'm getting in my head about that, but there must have been a split second that I was also awake in between those false trips into the kitchen, because I remember, in addition to thinking, I am so thirsty and am I going to die? The third thing I kept thinking was, why have I kept seeing the spine of this book, and I'm thinking, how come I haven't done anything with it? And I should stop right here just to have a little bit of a disclaimer. There's something that I see people on YouTube do, and it is infuriating. And that thing is taking a word that they damn well know how to say, and then like acting like ditzy about it, and suddenly being like, wait, cantaloupe, cantaloupe. How do you even say this fruit? Cantaloupe? And it's like, you just want to slap him in the face. It's like, you know that it's cantaloupe. You're not, 3 years old. So start recording again, say it the right way, and get on with your stupid video, okay? I just want you to know that I am not trying to pull one of those here. I literally went online trying to figure out how to say this. And I think it's one of those words that if you were not either born in a Scandinavian country or you were not programmed to speak a different language from some special ops, MK Ultra sort of thing, like in the show The Americans, from a very young age, you just have no chance of being able to say it the right way. It's one of those words that when a person teaches you how to say it, you say, "Hey, how do you say this? Is it Vaesen?" And they say, "No, it's Vaesen." And you're like, "Vaesen?" They're like, "No, Vaesen." I'm like, "Okay, Vaesen?" They're like, "No." And you're like, I can't. Okay, I grew up in the Midwest, and so there's something wrong the way we talk. Something, we compress our eustachian tubes or something. We can't learn how to say anything new, right? So at least I'm not saying it how my dad would probably say it, which is like Vaesen. Wait, that actually is kind of right. But he would say it with like an old Chicago accent. He'd be like, "Yeah, I don't know. I had a sandwich yesterday with like a piece of sausage and a loaf of bread. They didn't have any mayonnaise, so I just put some Vaesen on top." So we're just gonna call it Vaesen, all right? And so, as you can see here, I have a fully loaded arsenal of Vaesen toys. And if I am to open these up and use them, which I hope to during this video, then you can as well. But let's talk about whether you need this stuff or not. So I didn't really want to make this like a box opening video or anything like that, but we might as well get this out of the way. Although it might be a little difficult. I'm still got a broken wing over here. So I have the card deck. This has 10 initiative cards and then 23 Vaesen, which if you've heard anything about this game, it's been around since 2022. This is the basis of the game is to, it's like Pokemon for Scandinavian forest monsters, right? You got to investigate these little or huge creatures, and so I am in terms of tabletop role playing, specifically in the solo community, I identify as a card boy. Card boys love to have a deck of cards on hand while playing. And in most Free League games, either in the starter set or in case of Forbidden Lands, the first set, we'll call it, you get some initiative cards, and then just the fact that we get these Vaesen cards as well made it seem like not a good investment. None of this stuff is a good investment. Let me just say that up front. Like, if you're a person right now and you're going to comment, do you need the cards? No. Nobody needs these cards or dice, all right? The only person who needs this is if and I don't even know why this person would exist, but if you're a person that's like, I want to come up with a really creative way of ensuring that my children will never go to college, or they'll have to go on scholarship, then these are great. If otherwise, don't do this. Okay? Live vicariously through me right here. I have a problem. I'm too far gone. I don't even know why anymore. I don't know why, but just don't grow up like me, okay? So just kind of throwing this stuff to the side here. So yeah, we have the usually 10 initiative cards up top, and this seems to be the recursive symbol of the game here. Uniform card backs. Let's see, actually, this is quite a few initiative cards. I'm liking what I'm seeing right here. It looks like all these pictures are in the book or one of the books. Yeah, so this is just 1 through 10. Nice card stock, no surprises there. And really, I would say that Vaesen belongs in a column of Free League products that are these are the like Electric State, Tales from the Loop, was it Things We Lost in the Flood or whatever, and Vaesen. These are games that, in terms of like mechanics and novel approaches to gameplay, they do have some cool stuff, but they're pretty simple in comparison to, say, a game like Twilight 2000 or Forbidden Lands, which no Year Zero system is really complicated, but these ones are sort of in a class of their own. And this is actually, in terms of this type of product, I think that this is where Free League is at their best. When they have an IP that's more artistically based, so both Vaesen and Electric State, Tales from the Loop, etc., are based off of these high concept tone poem art books. And I think that's really cool because those are media that are not incredibly filled in, right? And so it allows our imaginations to fill those things in. And the result of that, especially if you've been exposed to those books prior to playing the game, you probably have like a lot of built up ammunition of ideas, imaginary imaginariums that you've already developed prior to the game. And so they're really great for their presentation, their aesthetics. The art is incredible. This book especially is just very, very, it's like a prized possession. This is one of the games that, whether a person plays tabletop or not, they're going to pull this off the shelf and just be blown away with it. The craftsmanship, how the book is made, it feels like it's sort of like a cloth cover. The art has this, every piece is this Johan Egerkran's art from the Vaesen book that I think was 2010. I can't tell. He does do a forward in this book, but I could look that up. And it's in addition to the illustrations, that has this sort of like, it's like a vibrant color palette that is illuminated by the leg lamp from the Christmas Story. You know, just like this very soft yellow antique lighting. And so it is amazing at building a mood, and it feels very coherent. It feels very special. It has these sketches. It has little pieces of handwritten notes that are scrawled across some of the pages that give you the feel that you've like, found a notebook right off the path in a snowy forest and stuff. And so this is really amazing in terms of just a creation, Is the gameplay mechanics going to blow you away? Probably not, but there are some cool things in this. There is like a headquarters that you can build up, like much like the Stronghold in Forbidden Lands, and a few other things that put some nice touches on here, but nothing that you're going to say, wow, this is the most incredible way of achieving this mechanic or whatever. So yeah, all of these cards are the pictures from either the core book or one of, I think, I might be wrong, but I think there's 4 supplements. Now, I know that you have, there's one for Great Britain and Ireland. There's also A Wicked Secret. There's also Something Something Season. And then there's, I'm not sure, but one thing that makes it especially surprising that I have not played this out yet on the channel is that Free League has actually released like an official solo supplement that also, and I just want to laugh at this because the Thursday's Child is from the song, like the little nursery rhyme, and I think it refers to Odin. Or no, Odin is Wednesday. Thor, right? Yeah, so tied into Norse mythology. But for whatever reason, my mind just went to the Bowie song that I'd be happy to play. And I think Bowie would be happy to let me play. It's just whoever owns it, I don't think would be happy to let me play it on the channel. And in case you don't know how that works on YouTube, if you play 4 seconds of a song that somebody owns on an hour-long video, that person claims all of the profit for your video. All of it. How about that? Luckily, YouTube now gives you a chance to like edit it, which is cool. So you have these Vaesen. You can see they vary in size, has nice descriptions and their names on the back. So as usual, the cards in some games will be more central into how useful they are. For the most part, the initiative cards they're okay. I think they've grown on me a little bit. When I first started using them in Dragonbane, I said, why don't we just roll for initiative? But I've started to enjoy the cards some. What I really wish that they had, because the Thursday's Child supplement puts playing cards to use, is a standard deck of playing cards. Like if they just put, but I guess because there's only 33 cards here, that'd be kind of difficult. But I think that would be a nice touch, obviously, but one that would double the size of the deck. So I understand if that's not in the cards. And then we have the dice. A good way to determine the complexity of a Free League game is to look at how many dice are available in the core set that you can buy from the shelf or that are available, because no matter how many are there, it's not enough. But generally, less means it's going to have less complexity. And this is a game that what am I doing? Has I believe only base and gear dice, if I'm not mistaken. And the more complex games will have a skill dice, and the most complex games will have like a step dice formulation. So these just have looks just like 6, unless I'm not seeing a part of this. Sorry, I'm doing the best I can here with one arm. Yeah, I believe this is, yeah, so no surprises there. Be nice if they had a little bar of soap there, wouldn't it? Enjoy the dice, and hey, take a wash. That's from us, from our family to yours. Here at Free League, you stink. So yeah, these are very basic dice here, and what this says to me is we're not going to have tons of effects from pushing the rolls, because first of all, it looks like there's just enough for base dice here, and there's not really any notable graphic on the 6s or the 1s. The 6s are sort of tied together in this wheel here, but if we look at something like the Mutineer Zero dice, for example, we can see that on the base dice, oh no, that's skill dice. On the base dice, if you roll a 1, it's like biohazard. If you roll a 6, it's like nuclear fallout. And then obviously you have 3 different colors for your base attributes, your skills, and then any gear that you have. So, but hey, it's, more is not always more. Okay, so then the last thing, and I know that there is probably some sort of desire to not show what's inside a GM guide, which I honestly think the industry really needs to get over that. It's just ridiculous because all this stuff is already in the core rule book. And so what they do is they say, well, you just have to buy it and see what's inside. And very often, I must say with Free League especially, there's been a lot of disappointments. The Dragonbane GM guide, not very good. So if this game had just come out, I probably have a little bit of reservations about this, but I did look online, and some games right when they come out, it's very hard to find the inside of a GM guide online, but a very standard Google search now reveals this, so I don't feel like I'm giving away any company secrets. And furthermore, I really think people need to get over that. That's not very fair to the consumer to tell them, to buy something and they don't even know the categories of what's covered in that. Sorry, I should not be covering half my area here. I don't know the categories of stuff, right? If I were to buy this, it says a deluxe Game Master screen in landscape. It features Johan Egerkron's art on the outside, right? And a host of useful tables and important information while keeping the GM plans hidden. Now, I didn't even read this before, though. A large double-sided poster featuring the mythic North on one side and the town of Uppsala on the other, which is actually really nice because I was wondering if in some games they'll include the map in the back cover. I think they recently did that on Electric State. So that's nice, though. So this you could usually dump. This is a very nice map. Look at right after I complain. So this is Uppsala. I don't even want to fully unfold. Well, I guess I'll go for it. This is not one that's 16 panels like some of these. So this is very nice, actually. This is a nice resource. So that's the mythic North. The North as it might have once could have been. And then that's about as much I'll do there. So you get the gist. Because already my workstation is falling apart. Okay. So then inside we have, that's a very cool picture here that's also available inside the core book. And inside, thankfully, we have laminated one of the best GM screens, which is at least partly by Free League, is the one for Morkborg. But unfortunately, it has these extra, actually, I think I have them right here. It has these extra cards that are tucked into the corners, and they're very nice. I'm not complaining about that. But I have gotten it twice, and the things that hold them in have broken both times. And so just give us a laminated screen. If at all. I mean, really, it's so easy now to make a GM screen, just if you have the core book, just see what's useful for you. So the first two panels, I'm like, okay. Now this I actually do like, the mystery step by step. And I know that I scrutinize these a little bit differently because I'm a solo player, but anything that's going to anchor us to a nice loop, even if that's not exactly the loop that we're going to follow in solo play, I think that's great. Questions for experience points, fine. That seem, anything that you use once in a session, I feel doesn't need to take up space on a GM screen. Skills, I like having those skills there. Animals, okay. Sometimes I look at GM screens and I go, did the person who made this play this game? Fast and slow actions, medical care, armor cover. And then on this side we have enchantments, curses, and trollcraft. Now I have to be honest, I have played in a failed group that did Vaesen. We met, I think, 3.5 times. And then we had that, which we have to figure out a name for this in the TTRPG community, the email with a person who says, hey, I can't make it this Thursday. Could anyone do Friday? And then another person says, I can do Friday if it's after 2. And then someone says, oh, I can't do after 2. And then no one ever writes an email ever again. It just is over. You're just like, what happened? Like, we missed a week and it's just gone? Because I'll be the guy who then emails and like, hey, what's going on with this? And then I have to like face the quadjection from the other 4 people in the group. All right, so what we'll do next in order to save a little bit of time, because my instincts were telling me, well, next you should go through and page through the entire book. But I realized that means if we expect to get to any actual solo play, this video will be 6 hours long. So what we'll do instead is I'll quickly roll up a character off screen and then review that just to see who we're going to be using to play. And I'll go through the life path process. It's pretty quick. And then instead of looking at the whole book, we'll review the solo rules together. And then I'll add a little bit of just explanation around the edges, just to point out some areas that this game differs a little bit than other Year Zero games. Then we'll just get into a mystery and see what that looks like and play it out a little bit and see what we think. So I'm going to roll up a character whose first name is definitely going to be Jorma, and other than that, we will see. So just a little bit of an aside. There are these like archetypes you could use, but whenever possible in free league games, or really any game that has this, I like to use these life path or background tables, because it allows you to get to know your character a little bit better. Like, okay, well, let's just take a pause for a second here in this video. I think you're all old enough to have this conversation. So, I think there's some movie magic that all of you, assuming that you're all non-toddlers who have developed object permanence, all of you understand that when I pause a video, suppose I hold my thumb here and pause, and then restart the video here, you understand that while moving this thumb from here to here, from your point of view, that took 0 seconds, but on my end, it was a little longer than that. It was 2 or 3 seconds. To further illustrate this idea here, if I say I went and took a bathroom break. In fact, I have to do that right now. Let's do that. Let's do that right now. In fact, before I go, I think this will really hammer home the emphasis here. I'm gonna go run to the restroom. I actually didn't go yet because this was flickering, and I was like, maybe it's almost out of power, so I plugged it in. Anyways, that didn't help the flickering. So I'm gonna go now. Okay, I'm back. So that was what, 2 minutes and some change. But you experienced that as 0, right? It was instantaneous. We all realize that. And, though you may not think about it, it's not anything that's like blows your mind, right? The point is that most of the time that I take those sorts of breaks between pauses are 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Rarely are those breaks more than 20 minutes. Those kind of breaks might happen, say, I don't know, say I get like a grocery delivery order right while I am recording, or maybe there's someone across the street. There's someone who lives across the street from me that I think takes an ambulance to places instead of like an Uber, because there's an ambulance there like every other day. Anyways, so, big ambulance siren, I might have to pause, or someone's using a jackhammer drill on the street, whatever. Now, occasionally there are times when those pauses, 0 seconds, though they may appear to you, are 30, even 45 minutes. And usually when that happens is when I'm moving and grooving along, recording, and then I'm about to move into a next segment, and I say, I should really review the content here before I move on, just to make sure that I'm not saying anything that's like misleading or confusing or wrong. And when that happens, I will sometimes take 20, 30 or more minutes to do that, just to make sure I'm maybe jot down some notes on an index card or something like that. And so those can get up there. Even sometimes I'll get lost in it, and an hour will go by, and I'll go, crap, I got to get back to the video, right? Why am I saying all that? Because I just wanted to establish a little bit of scale here before I tell you that the period of time that has elapsed between the last segment before this one, the one where I said I was about to roll up a character, and I was carrying on about some stupid reason I like life paths is because that was 23 hours ago, almost a whole day. And in that day, I've changed as a solo gamer, changed as a Vaesen player, changed as a man. And the reason for that is because I had a usual suspects drop your coffee cup on the ground moment. Maybe not that severe, but as I was reviewing the contents of both Vaesen, the core game here, as well as the solo supplement Thursday's Child, I started to have this thought. Well, it was quite specific. It was as I was looking through Thursday's Child, the solo supplement, I said, am I missing pages to this? Because I have played that. I think I actually played it twice when I first started experimenting with solo playing. And I remember thinking, wow, this is a great supplement. And as I'm going through it now, I want to say, I still think it's a very, very good, very cool supplement. But I'm sitting here wondering, how did I solo play this? This does not have everything that I need to successfully solo play. And I think what it was I was a bit green, right? It was one of those things where I was at a level in my development as a solo role player that I probably had these moments of transient confusion or gaps where I was like, how do you deal with this? And I either just sort of galloped by, or I hand waved, or I think even more likely, I might have said to myself, well, you're probably not like seeing the whole picture, or understanding this, so just do the best you can, which I think is generally probably a good way to go about things with this in general. But as I'm going through it again, and I'm thinking, here's a routine video. I've played this. I've read it. I've owned this. I've played in group campaign of this. I've done one shots. This shouldn't be a problem. But as I was going, I started to realize that this supplement, this solo supplement, well, it needs a supplement. And so it started off with me just kind of taking some notes, an attempt to sort of do some ad hoc mock-ups to bridge the gaps between what was available and what I needed. And then those notes, I said, there's a lot of scribbles here. Why don't I go ahead and put this in my notes app on my phone? And then I said, this is quite a bit to be typing with one hand in my notes app. Why don't I go ahead and put it on the computer? And then it traveled to Microsoft Word. And the point is, we're here 23 hours and 11 minutes later. And I now have 24 pages. And I will say, let me see if I can bring any of this up. All right. Well, I'll do a quick scroll through of what I have here, but just as a disclaimer, it is not done. And additionally, so that I don't have to keep Microsoft Word open, because for whatever reason, when I stream that through OBS, my computer explodes. But not only is it unfinished and quite a bit disorganized, I also exported it as a PDF, and so the formatting is all whacked. But basically, this has become what I hope to be a like a full supplement for that I can put on drive-through, and that everybody can share the fruits of my toil. But for now, in the interest of this video, I think we're going to alter the trajectory here. And what I would like to do instead is, because I, you know, for the 6.5 of you who really wanted there to be just straight up old-fashioned rocky training montage style of endless solo play, this will be a little bit different. But for those of you who are invested in learning and understanding some of the process of solo conversion, or what to look for, or how to think about a game in terms of what you need and what's missing, and what would be what would improve it and what would make it more solo friendly, etc. I think this could be quite a valuable conversation. Okay, so what I want to do instead is three things. The first thing, rather than giving I was never planning on doing this first part in a video, which was like explaining how to play Vaesen. That was never part of the plan. I was going to kind of give some highlights and stuff, but there's a bit of a built-in assumption here that you have some familiarity with Year Zero games, but you don't need that to understand the more broad strokes of what I'm going to be talking about here. So what I'll do is I'll start by talking about what sets Vaesen apart from other Year Zero engine games, because each Year Zero engine game has a little bit of special sauce in terms of how some of the mechanics are interpreted, or how they play out, and usually it's usually quite creative and well aligned with like the theme or the narrative content of the game. So it rather than having stress dice in this game, when you fail a roll in this game, you're going to get whatever, a bane, or that's not true what I just said, but whatever it is, it tends to have a clever way of conforming to the meta narrative or whatever. So I'll talk about what's unique in Vaesen, and there's actually quite a few things that are different, and quite a few that I forgot were different, probably because I had no experience in them. So we'll do that really quick, and then we'll review Thursday's Child, which is a solo supplement. And then we'll talk a little bit about, while we're doing that, we'll talk about what things jumped out at me as being like, oh, this piece is missing. broadly speaking, the major thing I noticed was that I think Thursday's Child does a great job of generating the mystery and gameplay progression, like the fiction content. It does a cool job of that, and as well as manufacturing a mystery and tying it into the Vaesen and hitting the spirit of what group play is like. But in terms of mechanics and gameplay modifications, there's almost nothing. And the reason that that is important, I'm not just being a sort of a crabby or like a crank or being prissy, is that for the most part, Year Zero engine games are deadly. The reason for that is they're more narrative based, and they're more focused on creative solutions to problems. They are more focused on overwhelming power that your character may one day be able to contend with, but has a long way to go. And they're deadly. So when you get into combat, sometimes if you play alone in Deepfall Breach, Dragonbane solo, I would say for the n equals the entire amount of people who have ever given a serious attempt at that, I would say 80% of people probably died within the first like hour or two of play because you're just not ready. It's dangerous. And so in many free league games, you're going to have combat. It's enriching combat. It's fun. The mechanics are good. But I think from players, especially those who migrate from 5e or Pathfinder, games where you really look like you really do start to feel like a god among, you're just like a superhero after a while, and you're just shooting flame out of your fingers and lightning out of your butt and just mowing down people. You really can't do that in these games. And so what I am why I'm motivated to try to add some of these mechanics is because I think that it's not enough to have a solo supplement that conceptually or hypothetically works. I think you need solo rules and solo guidelines that will actually make room for a satisfying solo experience. And again, no shade on Free League for this. I am really really happy that there's such a major company who's making such an effort to include resources for solo players. It's a work in progress. It's a collaborative work. They're discovering along the way. This was from 2022, so but I think it could be very helpful. So with that in mind, we'll finish by talking about some of the fixes that I have come up with. Some of them I think I have it locked in, and some of them I need to still think about a little bit more. And maybe if you have feedback on those, your input could be helpful as well. And then hopefully with that, I can shave this document down into something a little bit more manageable, and in a way that Exhibit from Pimp My Ride would be proud. I'll be able to publish a supplement for your supplement so that your supplement can have a supplement. Okay, so what sets Vaesen apart? So first of all, I think Vaesen is the funniest, and by funny I mean the type of funny where if you don't laugh you'll cry, suggestion that the specialized customized dice set is in any way sufficient to cover the dice rolls that are needed, because these came with 6 dice, and I can tell you straight up that is very quickly, even in solo play, not going to be sufficient to cover the rolls that are necessary. Furthermore, there's very little in rules as written, very little meaning for rolling a 1. Well, I guess there's none. Whereas in other year 0 games, rolling a 1 is, at least after you push your roll, I mean, that just kind of says it all. That's usually what a 1 looks like. Here, it really doesn't matter. And then the 6s are not very distinct either. So if you were looking for a freely game to pass on for these, this would probably be one for that. And I mention that, again, only because I think that's relevant to some of the unique properties of, or the unique things of how Vaesen deals with some core mechanics. Okay, so I will say that in terms of the mechanics, I think the driving pressure from any of these changes is to make the game more evocative of this thematic focus on mystery, horror, and the supernatural. Okay, so still using 6-sided dice. We're not using any step dice in this game. And the bottom line is a roll of 6 is a success. And most things you do, most skill tests, you just need 1 success. That's pretty uniform across year 0 engine games. It needs to not be an extraordinary circumstance, but for most skill tests, it should require 1 success, and there has to be a pretty darn good reason for there to be 2 successes required, and a really rare, really difficult thing that is sort of, I like to think of it as like those contests at basketball games where it's like you get 1 chance to shoot a basketball from half court for $10,000. It's like you could make that shot, but it's very unlikely. You can set the difficulty for 3, and I think that is double or triple so that's a very near impossible difficulty in this game, because at least starting out, you're just not going to have as many dice as you do in other games. So, as I GM Mutineer Zero or Coriolis, sometimes I'd have players doing dice pools of 12 dice, and I think we could probably get up there in this game, but not as much, not as fast, and certainly not in solo. Okay, so that simple piece of things stands. However, some differences creep their way in. So first of all, in other games, when you push a roll, meaning you either do not get a 6, i.e. a success on your first roll, or you don't get as many 6s as you want, you would you have the option to push your roll, and pushing your roll has some sort of risk and some sort of reward. And in most games, the reward is that you have the potential to succeed in your roll. And some games like Mutineer Zero have an additional dimension of reward in that pushing your roll gives you a mutation point. Sort of the idea with pushing a roll is that you are pulling up your britches, your face is getting red, you're really giving it your best effort. And so if there's anything in the narrative of the game that would indicate that would yield some sort of outcome, that's what would happen when you push the roll. Whenever you'd push a roll, you re-roll everything other than any dice that came up as 6s. In other games, you would also leave some of the 1s on the table, depending on what sort of assortment of different dice types you have. Base, usually the dice types are base, skill, and gear. And so, for instance, you would re-roll your base dice that you do not re-roll any base dice that come up as 1s or 6s, or any gear dice, because those are already determined. Anyways, don't want to cloud anyone's mind with stuff that's not over relevant for this game. The point is, any ones that don't come up as 6s in Vaesen, you re-roll. All right. As an aside, if you had a success, some people say, well, why would if I already have a success and the difficulty is 1, why would I want more? Well, a couple things. first of all, like I said, if the difficulty is more than 1 and you only get 1, you might push to get an additional success. But say you need 1 success and you want more. Why would I do that? Well, one situation is when you want resounding success, right? You want no, you want there to be no question about your success. And there are some soft reasons for this that don't actually usually come up in play very much. So one that will often be proffered in the core books is something like if you're trying to show off to somebody or you're trying to prove a point. But especially early game with the level of risk that's involved in pushing rolls, it just it doesn't very often seem worth it for that. But I do see it used often when there's some sort of quantity yield that you get from rolling a 6. For instance, if you are a thief in a game and you're trying to steal like some crystal plates, from an armoire, and the GM says, all right, for every success, you're able to snag one of those plates, and you get 1, and then you go, I really want all 3 of them because I really want to get lots of money when I peddle them or whatever, so I'm going to re-roll. That's a more likely scenario for that. Whatever the reason may be to push a roll, you'll pull up anything that's not a 6, and then you'll try to roll again. In other games, having a 1 come up would be unfortunate because then I would get some sort of penalty. In other games, that's what I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to avoid this appearance of this 1. In Vaesen, it doesn't matter. Because in this game, the moment you push a roll, you already know that you will receive a condition for that. All right. And a condition, 2 categories. There's either physical or mental. There's 3 types of conditions for each of those categories. It depends on what skill you're testing. So you become like broken, battered, exhausted. I think for the mental ones, what is it? I wrote this down. There's like angry, frightened, hopeless, etc. So you already have that condition when you push the roll. So that changes the calculus here on pushing a roll, right? Because in other games, say I want to push this roll and I go, all right, I hope I just don't, oh, darn, I did get another 6, but I also got a 1, so I guess now I get the penalty. Now, if you push a roll in Vaesen, you will get the condition, and that condition will either be mental or physical, and depending on what attribute you used will determine that. Okay, so physique and precision are going to be physical, and then logic and empathy are going to be mental. And say you fail a roll on, or you push a roll on empathy, and you gain a condition of angry. Until you get that fixed, all of your mental-based skill tests are -1. Okay. If you get another condition, then it's -2, another mental condition. You could have 1 mental condition and 1 physical, and that means you get a -1 in all of your skill checks. You could have 2 conditions in physical and 3 conditions in mental, and that means that for any mental-based skills that involve logic or empathy, you have a -3 on your roll, and for any physical-based skills with precision or physique, you get a -2. All right. So you can see as you go down the line, it's quite a detriment, right? It's quite a detriment because it's like the risk and reward almost seems disproportionate, and especially when you consider that you can get a condition either from pushing your roll or for having like a negative outcome, in a skill test or something else. And so if you have 3 conditions in either of those categories, mental or physical, you have 3 in either one of them, and then you get another condition in either category, you're broken. And when you are broken, you really you need help. You can't really do anything, and you need first aid, because you also have to roll on a critical injury table, which will require intervention, could have long-lasting effects, could often does change the trajectory of your character's story. And so, with that in mind, you really have to wonder why you would push a roll. Okay, well, in order to understand that, especially if you've only played a different year zero game where pushing your roll is a little bit squishier. In Mutant Year Zero, sometimes people will push their roll for the hell of it because you get a mutation point and that allows you to use your mutation power. But in this, you're like, well, why would I do that unless it was some sort of thing where I was desperate to get that outcome? Well, Vaesen works on a different economy of odds and in a different economy of stakes. The stakes are very high. This is a sort of eldritch. This is like Free League's Call of Cthulhu. Okay, so these things that you're up against here, some of them are maybe something that a human who is well trained could fight. Many of them are, if you're really well trained, prepared, fearless human, you can maybe hope to contain or escape. And there's very few though that you can like destroy on your own, because these are mythical creatures we're dealing with here. And so because of that, and because the game is focused on creative solutions that involve non-confrontation and deception and lateral thinking and minimizing exposure to damage, when you do need to make a skill test, it can have a significant sequelae of outcomes. And what I mean by that is, whereas in another game, Free League or not, you might try to infiltrate a compound, and you might start by trying to undo the front lock by doing a skill test, and then that doesn't work, and so you climb the fence and you have to do an agility test, and then you fall from the top of the fence and you do a resilience or toughness, and then you try to get by some guards and you do some sneak check and everything. In Vaesen, a single skill can carry you a long way, a single skill test, right? You might see, can I infiltrate this building, yes or no? Because the focus here is on narrative investigation. The focus is not on you bounding through hallways and over gates and all this stuff. I mean, it very well may involve that, but the focus is on the creation of the story, and it's not like it's not as much as in other tabletop games where it's almost like a series of mini games, which there is the theory that like all tabletop games are simply that, but I think some are more or less apparent when that happens, and Vaesen is less so, because it's going to be focused on learning, investigation, observation, discovery, deduction, and it's not going to be as combat heavy, okay? And so when you do make a skill test in Vaesen, you're going to have one of whatever 4 attributes you have. And in my starting character, I started drawing up before I had my peered into the abyss. My attributes were either 4 or 3. So you take the attribute dice, 4, and then you'll use a skill. Most of the ones I did have were either 1 or 0, and then one of them that was related to my core attribute was 2. I think that was investigation or something, but doesn't matter, because if that would add my skill to it, and unlike in some year zero games where you can't use certain skills unless you have at least 1 point, you can in this. You can use any skill even if you have 0 in it, but you would just use your base dice for that. So say you only had base attributes for that, you'd roll 4. Add 1 for skill. And then when you get into equipment or gear, which the third set of dice in this game, there is a third set, it is just called bonus dice. And rather than having it specific to gear, it includes any additional dice you get from weapons, from equipment that could be advantageous, right? You have a grappling hook or something like that, a lock pick. It could be from environmental advantages or boons. It could be something to do with something supernatural. It could be some piece of advice that you got that gives you an edge or whatever. So you would take all those dice, and that would have to be negotiated with the GM, and then you add that as your bonus dice. So assuming that it is a single die more than what I just have here, and this is a very, very common dice pool here, you have met the total number of Free League Vaesen brand dice. And then you roll again. We're looking for those 6s. So here I would have a success. Okay, and so that is pretty par for the course, other than the nomenclature there of calling them bonus dice and having a bit more narrative flexibility in what goes in that bonus pool. All right, we talked about the conditions. 3 conditions: physical, exhausted, battered, wounded; 3 mental, angry, frightened, hopeless. Each condition that you get, that is a -1 penalty on any skill rolls involving the relevant attribute. So if you have a physical condition, -1 on any skills that are related to physique or precision, and mental, logic, or empathy. And in case you're not aware, the GM screen here, I think, has a listing of the skills. Yeah, all of the skills are tied to one, in parentheses there, they're tied to one of the attributes. So if I had a physical condition and I was doing medicine check that's related to precision, I'd have to do a -1. It's an additional -1 for every additional condition, but you always roll at least 1 die. Okay, so if like these condition penalties bring you to 0, you can't roll, as long as you have 1 like point in something, an attribute or a skill, you roll 1 dice. And so technically you can get brought down to minus, I guess the max you would be before being broken is if you had 3 in a category and you got 1 more. If it's sequenced correct and you got like 1 mental condition, 1 physical, 2 mental, 2 physical, 3 mental, right? And then you got a 4th one. I'm not actually sure about this, if like you had the other 2 already, if that would matter. But I would say usually the most you're going to have is a -2, maybe a -3 before it's a game over and a critical injury and you're broken. But point being why I'm going over this again is because those penalties do stack. And unlike other games, it is spread across the categories of attributes, right? Like in other Year Zero games, if you got a condition on whatever the stand-in was for physique, it would only be a -1 to physique-based rolls. Whereas here it's all the physical, all of the mental, if you have the condition in one of those 2 categories. Furthermore, in other Year Zero games, in order to be broken, you need to reach 0 in a certain attribute category. Okay, so let's just say, don't even think about like the numbers on these dice. Just think of each of them as 1 unit. If your strength or physique was 4 and you got a condition or whatever it's called in any of the game, you get a -1. So all future attribute checks with that are now at a -1. and then you got a -2, and then you got a -3, and then you got a -4, you would be broken. But it is irrelevant what your total attribute numbers are in this game, regardless of what they are. And I think the max is 5 or 6 for attributes. It's 3 conditions in either one, mental or physical, and then getting another condition, you are broken. All right. So it doesn't matter if you have 6 points in physique and you get 1 condition, 2 conditions, 3 conditions. In other year 0 games, you'd still have 3 chances left here before you're broken. No. In this, 3 conditions plus 1, and you're broken. Okay. And they do stack. So those penalties do, -1, then -2, then -3. And if you're at -3, I mean, you need to go get help because you're not gonna pass a lot of rolls. All right. Reason for this again is because of this altered economy of risk, and also the focus on a driving narrative. And the last piece of the difference regarding this condition thing here that really hammers this home is, and this is a small change, but it's meaningful, is that because you know that when you're going to push your roll, you already got a condition, you have a better idea of what you're putting on the line. Furthermore, you get the condition after whatever you're trying to do with the push would happen. Okay, this is a subtle difference. In other year 0 games, it is like, well, you re-roll, right? Say I rolled 5 dice, I got a 6, and I go, okay, I'm going to push. I'm going to roll these other 4, and I roll, and one of them comes up as a 1. I said, oh, dag nabbit, I got a condition, or whatever the equal is of that. That's not even a question. The condition is there, but it is going to happen after whatever you're trying to do is attempted. And you know that in advance. All right. And so the importance of that is, again, a sort of cinematic effect and a risk calculation effect. And what I mean by that is, in other games, you might roll and hope for the best. You might say, well, I'm going to try and throw this grenade, and I hope I don't roll any misses, any 1s. And then you may do that. But in this, if you, whether or not you roll any 6s or 1s on the push, the condition is going to happen. And so if you're at 3 conditions and you know that you're going to push here and you're going to be broken, that informs the narrative, because that means you might be sacrificing yourself for your group. And that does have an advantage from a narrative standpoint, whereas you have to wait for the result of the dice to understand how the narrative will proceed from there. You know already what is lost. You don't have to hope, especially because, and I forget what this cognitive bias is called, it has to do with gambling, but people spend almost no time considering what reality will look like if they were to lose. They only think about what will happen if they win and then simply hope they will. So this happens very often in year 0 games. I actually think sometimes it is quite fun in retrospect, but rather than being like, okay, do I want to push? Well, if I get a 1, then that'll be really bad because I only have this. I don't ever think of that. I go, let's go, big money, no whammy. I hope I don't get a 1, right? Yeah, I got another 6. And so it just allows the consequence and the sequence of what happens next to unfurl very clearly. Okay. Next difference is fear. Every Vaesen that you encounter has a fear rating of either 1, 2, or 3. And I guess it's not just Vaesen, any supernatural threat in the game. when you encounter a supernatural threat in the game, you have to do a fear test. Fear test is empathy plus vigilance. And when you get a failure, you get a mental condition, and possibly you're also going to get a narrative consequence and a mechanical consequence of like freezing in place or fleeing. And this is whether or not it's combat. So I would say, though, if you're in combat, you're likely to get the mechanical consequence. And if you're not in combat, say you just see a Vaesen, maybe they don't notice you yet, and you do a fear test and fail, that might have a narrative consequence. Or it could have some mechanical thing. You drop something, you lose something, you break something. And this is not, as far as I know, an Alien may have something similar to this, but this is a pretty unique system as far as I'm concerned. And it also is going to be one of the things that presents a bit of a problem as we try to transition into solo play. So kind of put a pin in that. But the Vaesen, depending on how terrifying they are, they have a higher fear score, and everyone will have to roll that. And I believe, and I can check this before we finish up here, I believe that the number of supernatural threats that are there, you have to roll against all of them, which, so scary is a Vaesen or a bloody corpse, terrible is a werewolf, unbearable is a mass grave, and so 1, 2, 3. So either way, I think when you have one person and you potentially are encountering lots of creatures, undead stuff, it's going to create some problems for solo play. So we'll talk about that. And then combat wise, some differences, I think not completely unique, but not in every Year Zero game, is combat is very abstract. Distances are not very precise, close, near, or far. Weapons give bonus dice, like +2 to certain types of attacks, and they're not gear dice necessarily. The way that special effects of things are determined, like usually if you roll extra successes, there is, in Coriolis, for example, an extra success usually has like 2 options. The options are you can do additional damage, or you can inflict a critical injury. And the options for that are basically in the critical injury table. But the way that the additional rolls are managed here is under each of the skills. So whatever skill you're doing, if you hit additional successes, extra 6s, then it's listed under each of the skills what you can do with those extra things. So for instance, physique or force, if you roll 1 6 and then 2, and that's all you need to succeed, but you roll 3 6s, you have an extra 2. It says by rolling more successes than required, you can increase your damage by 1. And this could be chosen multiple times. You can outmaneuver your enemy and exchange initiative with them. You can stress your enemy. It causes mental conditions rather than physical ones to them. You could push them into another zone of combat or a specific part of the battlefield. You can make them drop a weapon or an item, and you would need a fast action to pick it up, or you can grapple. And as we all know, no matter if you are someone who likes D&D, Dragonbane, RuneQuest, GURPS, whatever, the one thing that unites all role players in common is that nobody uses the grapple mechanic ever. Fight me. Okay. And so, this has a bit more tactical depth without like having a separate critical hits mechanic or something like that. The truly unique thing about combat, which I think provides one of the most difficult nuts to crack in terms of how we convert this to solo play, though I do have a plan that I'm quite proud of with this, is that with the you know how in Dragonbane there's like NPCs, are most of the enemies you confront are NPCs, and then the really big like epic enemies or boss enemies are monsters, and they have an aggression trait rather than like initiative, a single initiative. The thing about the supernatural enemies is that they tried to port the investigation dynamic into combat as well. So if any of you are old enough and remember Mike Tyson's Punch Out, or the one that came out after he had some legal issues, which I think was just called like Reich Meisens. No, I think it was called just Punch Out. There was a character in it called, well, each character had, like you could box them straight up and it was really difficult to impossible to beat them. But each of them had like a weak point. And if you found the weak point and you got the timing for it, you could just whoop them, right? And some of them were more obvious than others, and some of them were more difficult than others. And like there was a character named Bald Bull, and he did something called a bull rush, and you had to hit him in the stomach right before he was about to do this bull charge uppercut on you. And if you did that, it was an instant knockout. There's one character named King Hippo, who's a huge, like butter, like two butter beans, myost or whatever, congealed into this enormous creature who was barely human. And you just couldn't hit him. He blocked anything you did. And you needed Nintendo power to understand how to beat him, because the only way you could beat him was if you got a single jab into his face, his pants would drop. And before he, and no, it was, remember, this is an 8-bit system, so this was quite innocent, but there was on his tummy, there was like a Band-Aid. And before he he would get really embarrassed and try to pull his pants up. And before he could do that, you had to hit him in the belly. And once you did that, you could just unload on this guy, right? And it went from being this impossible fight to, once you knew the weakness, you could like get through King Hippo without even losing a single energy, right? And with your main character, Mac. So Vaesen creatures are supposed to have King Hippo tummies. And what I mean by that is the idea is a sort of narrative weak point, a Death Star exhaust thing that the characters during combat, they need to sort of use their intellect and clues and insights to figure out. And the GM would lead them on a path, towards this thing. Well, I think you could imagine some of the challenge this creates for solo play, because this is the classic solo player's dilemma, which is you cannot both know and not know something, right? So you can't go into combat and say, all right, here's the big ice dragon. And just so you know, the secret to how to beat him is you gotta put a candle on his armpit. But don't think about that. Just kind of spend a few rounds and act like you're confused, and then all of a sudden you remember. So we had to figure out some way to work with that. There's some other stuff with headquarters management that I also have some ideas about solo play with. Talents. These are special abilities that gives unique benefits. They're similar to how they are in other YZE games, but there's something unique about them. They're definitely tied into the theme. And like one of them will mitigate fear tests, or will grant bonuses when researching lore. If the priest talent, a player character confesses to you as an activity, heals 3 conditions. They're very thematic. They're very flavorful. I really do like them. There's one called like knowledge is reassuring. I like that. but yeah, each archetype in the game, which is officer, priest, servant, private eye, vagabond, writer, what was the, well, whatever. They each have 3 talents, and then there's a list of general talents. Another difference that is not in every Year Zero game is that you can pick up additional talents through XP accrual, and you can get general talents, but you can also get talents from other archetypes, which I actually don't know what I feel about that. I think that waters down archetypes and also leads to some narrative confusion. But for people who like more flexibility, I think that might be cool. But it's weird for me to be like an occultist and say, okay, I'm going to learn absolution and start taking confessions from people. It's like, that doesn't really make sense. I really like how resources are done in this game. Rather than having currency and accounting, you have a resource rating that gets determined pretty early on. And the thing I was about to go through before I switched the video over is this nice life paths in the back here. And right off the bat, you roll a d66 to see if you are poor, a worker, a burgher, or an aristocrat. And based on that, your resource number is either 1, 2, 3, or 5. And then as you roll the life paths, you can have additional resources added depending on what you become. So the character I was rolling up became a psychiatrist, and so they got some additional resources. And these resources, it's a total abstraction, and you can your resource number can be changed. I forgot the circumstances for it, but pretty much at a certain point, the only way that you're going to increase your resource number is through getting like a talent that will increase it. And I can't say that I know the mechanism for that. I can't say whether or not I love that, but okay. So normally you start out with a lower value for your archetype. However, this can be raised by spending skill points. Each point raises resources by 1 step, right? So you could, instead of giving skills, you could say, well, I just want to be rich, and so I'll redistrict one of my skill points there. And basically what this becomes, this resource number becomes a straight up skill test. So if I am an aristocrat and I come from, some important family and my resources are a 6, well, then every time I want to buy something, everything has a resource level. And all I have to do is roll as many successes that are needed to get that thing. So say I want a car and my resources are 6, then I can roll 6 dice and try to get 3 successes. You can borrow resources from other people. The system for that is, I forgot exactly what it is, but you could add like one of their dice. And you can also, there's sort of a free floating free capital thing that, like, when you have some extra money, you can add that, but it's still abstracted. So you could have like, my resource number is 4, and this week I have 3 floating capital. And so I could use any of those dice at any time to add to a resource roll if there's something that I really want. And so it's an abstraction of like liquid assets, as well as if you're an aristocrat, it's like I just have access to that money. And if you don't get it, you can roll again. You don't lose anything. So obviously that could create a little bit of strangeness, right? If I tried to say I purchased a battleship, I needed 5 successes and I had the roll of my life and I got it. Technically, the next day I could roll for another battleship. But it's one of those things that, yes, there are going to be aberrant moments, but for the most part, it balances out pretty well, and I really like the system. This will create some issues in solo play. I think you can consider as well, and that's something that I had to consider as well. So finally, the other things, won't go too far into it, but the center cycle or gameplay loop of the game is definitely going to focus on mysteries, investigations as the main unit of thrall of interest and intrigue, and that is basically your quests, and trying to figure out not only where a Vaesen is, what kind of Vaesen is it, what's this Vaesen capable of, but also trying to figure out its weaknesses, right? To figure out what's its belly band-aid, so that, you know, if you do encounter it and you don't have that information, you could be dead. Whereas if you do, you could potentially save a town. There are mementos. There's something in Mothership like this, which are just little trinkets that you can use twice, I think, a session to heal a condition per GM approval. You know, reminds me of home or whatever. I think it's mental conditions. So yeah, in summary, I guess you could say the big differences that we're looking at here are resource management, combat being a bit more of a puzzle, focus on investigation, narrative, and then these conditions and fear. All right, some other differences as well, but I think those are the big ones, especially as we talk about solo play. So let's do that next. Let's now take a look at Thursday's child. Speaking of impromptu little breaks that I take, just got this in the mail during this video, which is a Year Zero game, Sleepy Hollow, based on the Headless Horseman myth. So I also have a solo supplement for this. Right now it's PDF, but they're going to do a print on demand too. So not in this episode, but a little preview. Okay, 1 second. All right, so as stated before, Solo Thursday's Child is available on drive-through, and actually I'm going to check the current price on that. Yeah, $3. I'd do it. I'd do that for $3. Okay, so it's all twisted. When enough things in my work area are like at an angle, it looks like an earthquake. Okay, so these are the solo rules. $3 by Per Holmstrom, who did something else I looked at recently, and I can't remember what. I think it was the Forbidden Lands supplement. Anyways, this has I think it's Johan Egerkrans does the art here, but I think all the art is in the core book, but whatever. So nice formatting here. It's the privilege of being an official supplement. It gets to look exactly like the core materials, whereas if you make a supplement that's third party, you kind of have to use their step down sort of templates that they give out. So what you need: the core rule book, standard deck of playing cards, and a pen and paper. Great. And the other thing that is a big, well, I shouldn't say the other thing. One of the things that is a big difference, or in terms of the mechanic of play, is this time tracker. And there is a supplement. Let me see. Yeah, so there is a supplement that's available for a few bucks on drive-through that has a tracker, this mystery tracker that's formatted for solo. And I think this is from Land of the Blind, Indestructo Boy on YouTube. And it's supposed to be form fillable, but it's not. And I have communicated with Taryn and also at drive-through, because on his end it is form fillable. And I think we have it figured out. So I'm sure this will be updated soon, but make sure it is before you purchase it. But it looks like a good tracker. And the reason I think it's not form fillable is because when you're uploading something on drive-through, it asks you if you want like a watermarked PDF. And I think that's something that I've selected as well in the past, because I was like, yeah, I guess. I don't know. Like I thought it had something to do with like pirating or something. And so what I guess it actually is like it locks down your PDF. So when you put a watermarked PDF out there, the end user cannot use any of the active elements on it. And so when I reached out to Indestructible to Taryn, I was like, hey, I just so you know, I can't. He's like, yeah, on my end, I'm using it right now. It's fine. It's because I think it's the watermark PDF, and so it's locked up. So I assume that seems like an easy fix, and hopefully that gets figured out, because it does look like a good sheet. And I think especially because there are other form fillable sheets out there for Vaesen, but they don't include the time thing. And the time tracker is a significant mechanic in solo play, and at the bottom of the sheet, it does have this time tracker down here, which is quite granular. And so it's my hope that will come around. Anyway, so solo play in a nutshell: create the opening of your mystery, start keeping a journal, and use the oracle and tables, explore the area and look for clues. And essentially the time factor, as far as I remember it, the calendar is a type of mystified resource management, right? Or like a sort of setting an economy of choices, creating a cost, so that it's creating a psychological incentive to ensure that the choices that you make are meaningful. It's kind of like, if you ever heard of some of the guidelines that physicians use in differential diagnosis, like, if you talk to med students early in med school and you say, here are the symptoms, what do you want to check this dude for? And they'll say, oh, well, it could be this, and it's like 83 things. And it's like, okay, we could test them for all that, but not only will that be $17,000, but also we'll have to like take so many biopsies of the liver here that the liver will, the actual biopsies will damage the liver more than whatever is wrong with it. And so in the same way, I think some games set up a similar differential diagnosis system where it's like, yes, it could be anything, but you want to try and narrow it down to the most likely culprits so that you're not wasting your resources. And I do like that. I think that generally we could call that a clock. And I think that clocks are useful in solo play. If they're done well, they are a great way to heighten stakes and urgency. If they're done poorly, it can be a situation in which you feel, I'll just say what I feel like when I have too many clocks running in a game, is I get that feeling that I have when I'm trying to write an email or something, and I'm getting like a text and somebody's knocking at my door and I'm getting 6 notifications, etc. And you just feel like frazzled. You feel like you can't really settle into the game because you're constantly checking things off. So the oracle here, and we could, I guess, use our dungeon solitaire cards, although I don't know if the difference between the red and the black here will be stark enough, but I just kind of feel like busting these out. So in general, the red cards indicate something positive, the black is something negative, and obviously it's going to function on cross-section of both color as well as card value, I guess you might call it. I don't think it's, maybe in the oracles it's divided by suit. All right, one hand problems. Let me fix these. Nah, this is really great. However, there's a bit of an elision with the tarot and the classic card deck, which makes sense because, in case you didn't know, the cards we have now, I think, were the original tarot. So instead, and this should have been the choice from the beginning because they're just the best, but we'll use our mini cards. They're so cute. Okay, the most common ways, yeah, so we could do red card means yes, black card means no, or of course we can call upon the exalted powers of the Fate Mill or my wedding ring. Okay, and if yes or no is sufficient, yeah, we know how to use an oracle. If the answer is no, okay, what kind of insight does the person have into the incident? Is the person lying to you? Here you can use the helpful or not table. So the helpful or not table is down here, and that's pretty predictable if we've seen any kind of oracles. On the right, we see this cheat sheet for playing a mystery. If you know, I encourage you to pick this supplement up and check it out. But the places of interest, this is stuff on keeping a journal, and then this is a pretty helpful mental state table. I think that when Free League does do supplements, solo supplements, one of the things they really manage to nail is like packing a lot of punch in their smaller tables, which is a sorry, that's very annoying, a reminder that you do not need like a D 650,000 table always. Sometimes bringing it down to more elemental parts is better. So this could be a good NPC generator table. I think it covers a lot of ground. Lots of examples, that's always good. And then we have this table, which is how to proceed in the mystery. And this is an interesting approach that I think could be adapted to a lot of different things. I think any sort of game in which you play an investigator or somebody who is trying to apprehend, this is a good system. It just has to be form fitted for the thing, because right, if you're playing like some cyberpunk game where you're trying to bring in, you know, some hackers, you're not going to necessarily roll up the same sorts of keywords that, oh, the hacker is out in the ice forest and they're collecting stardust. Although from some of the overwrought names that hackers give their malware, apotheosis, that actually ice forest might sound. So just a little side note here. I've had to open a lot of things with one hand since this surgery, and for whatever reason, these tiny cards, which I've opened before, one of the hardest. So we have these keywords, these clues, and so at this point, keywords, another, I think, really great table. And obviously, when you have 3 columns of a D66 table, mathematically you have tons of options there, and clues, example journals, and then finally this final table here. Actually, I think there's 3. Yeah, so it's clue, misdeed, and environment. And so what you have is certain clues that lead up to a certain Vaesen. Okay, now what I mean by that is if the clues are being organized from left to right, like if you look at the top row, the ash tree wife. The clues for the ash tree wife are that people are disappearing, forest workers are getting hurt, and a mysterious disease is spreading. Okay. And so you're going to unveil these clues one by one. And along that, you're going to hear about these you're going to hear about these misdeeds, and they're certainly on a very wide spectrum here. And these are the groupings of the Vaesen and the different environments that they're in. All right, so actually, let me reset a little bit, because the final table, the environments table, as I'm looking at that, if you actually want to play this solo, you really shouldn't spend too much time looking at that, because that one has a lot of information in it. But I mean, I think we're okay right now. Nothing's been too compromised, but I think it'd be better if we sort of focus on the gameplay loop here. And from that, we'll see a lot of, and maybe this would be a good way for you to self-evaluate, in terms of your ability to read the tea leaves here and say, what would I need to solo play this? Okay. Because here is the expectation for how this goes. You come to a town, it could be Uppsala, wherever, and you go in the core book to get an invitation, and there's somebody who gives you the quest. Okay. And like the investigations in the core book, they'll start with a misdeed. And this is the thing about these Vaesen, is that they're always up to no good. And so misdeeds could be something that's a bit naughty, up to like a horrible murder or something like that. Okay. And based on that, the misdeeds are gonna be very significant ticks mentally for which Vaesen it is, because even though that table that we saw looked like it had all kinds of different things, it actually had I don't know how many, 16 things, and they were rotated through so that there was every combination of these 16 clues would lead to one of the Vaesens, so that by the time you had 3 clues in the order that they were in, they'll tell you which of the Vaesen it actually is. Okay. Now, if you stop right there and think about that, I think right there is part of the fundamental problem with mystery tabletop games that don't involve, you could sort of like look at Lee Wade's Alone Against Nyarlathotep, Hotep, right? In order to successfully outsmart the usual trappings of tabletop role-playing mystery games, you need to write like 400 pages of lore. Because if you try to do it pre-generated like this, what you end up with is something that is the flavor of a mystery. It's mystery scented, but what it actually is a scavenger hunt. And the rewards for solving the mystery are out of sequence and therefore unsatisfying, right? Because think about how this goes. We hear about these misdeeds, we get this information, we go around town, we use the oracles to generate events. After each day passes on our little timesheet, we use keywords, or we use the different generators to generate different events, or there could be a new misdeed by a Vaesen or whatever it is. We're getting this new information on a certain period of time. Every time a certain unit of time passes, we're getting a little bit more information. And then we're using a little bit of the mechanics from the game. We're using learning. We're using our investigation skill. We're talking to NPCs and we're trying to get information out of them. And then once we get enough information, we do another dice roll skill check. And if that skill check is passed, we might work up to the point where we get an additional clue, and then we go back to it and we talk to more people, and then we get another clue, and we do the same thing, and then we got a third clue, and then we read from left to right, and we find out, oh, it was the Vaesen named Macaroni. I don't think there's a Vaesen named Macaroni, but there should be. By the time you learn who the Vaesen is, you don't care because you don't know Macaroni, right? It's not like a whodunit. It's not like Clue, where you have an intimacy with everyone at this party. You have a familiarity. You have suspicions. You have parts of you that think that Mr. Plum is innocent, and then another part of you that's like, yeah, but he's a bit weird, and then, oh, but am I misjudging him? And you have all these thoughts about it that when you find out who it is, you're able to have several satisfying mental experiences. Number one, you're able to like either congratulate or perhaps chastise yourself for not seeing the right clues. Each can be pleasurable in the same way that both lemons and pineapple are pleasurable. But like, you can also enjoy the sort of quixotic, euphoric twinge of discovery when the oh, how delightful, when you realize you've been tricked, but it was in good fun and all that. But what happens here is you're essentially playing mini Yahtzee or something, where you're just doing these dice rolls trying to get a number, and then when you successfully collect enough things, you then say, oh, cool, here's a name. And the name, like, you're not going to say, oh, I knew it was Macaroni all along. You might narrow it down to a couple different names, but what I'm saying is they don't mean anything, right? They don't have as much like narrative potency might be the word to use here, the expression. And how this can be enriched is if you have a GM, right, who's able to walk you through conversations with player characters and give you some things that are red herrings and other things where it was right in front of your eyes, and dark stories about what happened when this Vaesen came through town, what they did to my grandmother. And so you have all this stuff built up that there's some sort of release here. But because you don't know, you are able to establish some texture with these NPC generators and events and keywords and stuff, but it's all a bit scattershot, okay? And so even though everything I just said here sounds like I'm criticizing this solo supplement, it's actually the opposite, because this is not a unique limitation of Thursday's Child. This is a limitation of mystery tabletop games, because, and especially from a solo standpoint, it's the problem of the solo approach to it, because again, the delight of discovery in mystery games comes from a gap between what is known by the player and what is known by the GM. And the attempt to traverse that gap is the effort that you invest that makes the payoff feel worth it, or at least like worth your time. And every time I say something about this in a video, I'll get somebody who says, no, mysteries are totally possible in solo games, because what you do is you collect clues, and then using those clues, you combine those, and then you figure out what the mystery is. You reverse engineer it. I understand narratively that works. Like if I was using that mechanic as a tool to write a mystery story or tell a mystery story, that's correct. It works. Okay. But a tractor also works to like transport me, but I don't drive a tractor to work, because it does not have the same functional capacity as like a personal automobile. And the thing you're looking for in a mystery isn't like, you're not looking for the components of it. It's gestalt. You're not looking for the clues. You're looking for the satisfaction, the joy of discovery, the mystery, right? And so if you replace that with a sort of convergent word, a convergent creativity word game that is fun in a way, but it's not a mystery, right? It's like ordering um, a double cheeseburger with fries, and you get a tuna salad sandwich. It's like, yes, tuna salad sandwich is nice. It's not what I wanted, and it's not what I ordered. And you'd be a little bit miffed if someone tried to tell you that it was essentially the same as a double cheeseburger. It's just not. It is has some similarity in terms of like the platonic form, but it misses. It misses. And so I'm actually saying that given these limitations, I actually think that this supplement does quite a good job doing the best it can with the tools that are available to it. However, in terms of replayability, in terms of the cleanliness of how well this will come together, ultimately, my guess is that it is going to feel like a game of Guess Who, where you're just sort of knocking down possibilities until you narrow it down enough and say, it must be this one because I've exhausted all other possibilities. And that is a type of fun, but it's the same sort of fun of like playing War versus playing 500 Rummy. Like the level of complexity is so different and the objectives are so different that it's a different experience, and it just doesn't feel quite as textured and rich. Okay, I don't want to keep going because I've already burned out my clock by 10 minutes on that. So I am not saying that I have a solution to this, a definitive, complete solution, but I do think through these now 24 hours of working on this, I have a bit of an idea of where some of the trouble points lie. And the analogy that I want to give before I change over here to talk about some of the fixes we can do is to ask if anybody has any memory of something that was available by Nintendo, and it was called Game and Watch. And it was, I believe it was actually produced by Nintendo, and it had games like Mario Brothers, right? And there was, when I was a kid, there was the original Mario Brothers, and shortly after I was born, maybe 4 or 5 years later, there was Mario Brothers 2, which, boy, was that a fever dream. And then, of course, there was Mario Brothers 3, which was one of the all-time greats. The Hammer Brothers suit, the Tanuki suit, the whistles, an amazing game. And people, as they are now in a lot of ways, went gaga over Mario. These Game & Watch things, every kid in my neighborhood wanted a Game Boy, but only a few of us had a Game Boy, and I didn't get one till much later. I wanted a Game Boy, and for Christmas, I got a Game & Watch, which was like some of the same color as a Game Boy, but instead of being a game system, it was like one of those Tiger Electronics LED things. And let me see if I could actually bring up a picture of this. All right, this is incredible because this is like this is the box, the actual box that I remember opening. So it's Christmas morning, and I want a Game Boy more than anything. I remember I want Castlevania Adventure, and I open up the present, and I see this, and I'm blown away. I mean, everything here. Look at the screen, right? It says color screen, the picture of it, amazing. Super Mario Brothers, right? The Nintendo logo, everything. And then I open it up, and now this isn't the game I got, but this pretty much captures it here. What I get instead is, when I open it, is this. Now, This one is obviously, I found this on eBay. It's a Popeye game. But if you've seen these Tiger Electronic games, the images you see on the screen right now are the only possible images, right? And this is all of them on at once, but it was just these little blinking things, and there was maybe like one interesting image that if you beat the game, you'd get it or something. This was it. And I remember like slowly realizing what I had and how much of a piece of junk it was. And I think that the this is not a nice lead in, because I think I'm about to suggest that this supplement's a piece of junk. It's not. What I'm saying is the what what they've done here and what other solo supplements do is they take what you want here, which is Vaesen, and Vaesen is Game Boy, and what they give you is Game and Watch, because the game presented here is like Vaesen. It has the logo and it has like some of the moments, but it's not actually a solo version of Vaesen, or at least, to preserve the feelings of those who might say, well, that's you. Like, I love it, right? But here's essentially what this game does. So the promise of what is to be delivered is these rules allow you to play it on your own, and they can be played with one or more friends. The game uses these oracles, which are quite good. And in fact, I think the keyword oracles, all that, I already said it. And you have an invitation, you have a quest giver, you have these misdeeds, you have interesting locations to see where this happened. I'm looking at the cycle here. And then you fill out your journal and the details about stuff that you do. Now, I've said this before on the channel. I stand by it. It's no condemnation. I am not interested in journaling as the type of solo play I want to do. For me, it does not feel like solo play. It does not feel like recreation. And I think for other people, there are many people online, people I know personally that enjoy it. I think it comes down to what kind of things do you feel that you do naturally, and things that you do too much of. And something that I do naturally very often is write and describe things. And things that I do not do very often is not write and sort of like take things as they come and be more or less like in a flow state. And so I'm not interested in a process that involves much of the same mechanical, logistical, and mental processes that I do all day at work. Okay. So I'm not interested in that, but that's what this is, right? So they're using journaling to replace role play. And for me, that is not a sufficient or interesting or accurate replacement. I saw this in a recent article saying that journaling in solo games is intended to replace the role play mechanic. Rather than having a conversation at a table, you write it down. I do not agree with that, okay? But we get to use these oracles, number 6, that sprinkle in some sort of oblique event or a phenomena that seemingly out of nowhere alters the course of the game. And then we adapt to that, right? And we start to have these encounters, and we track our time. And given how much time has passed, we will have additional encounters, which will give us more information. And all along, we're writing it down. We're journaling this. And we can meet some interesting people because we're using these NPCs to these NPC tables to generate random people, and they're giving us new information. And here, I do think there's something fun. Although I would say, if when I would do this now, and when I did this years ago. I did journal, but I finally did it enough times to be like, yeah, not for me. Now I wouldn't journal any of this. I would just like maybe take notes and talk it out. And either way, that is a type of fun, but I'm still feeling like something's missing. There's some game here that's missing, right? And then I'm getting more discoveries, and I'm using skills that I guess I produce the same way that I do for a group game, except what if my character has no investigation or learning skills available? Then uh, I've really made a serious mistake, right? Like if I didn't put any points in those, because besides investigation, learning, and maybe manipulate, maybe observe, I I don't know if am I fighting anybody? Um, am I am I merely trying to figure out who the Vaesen is? Once I figure it out, am I having a confrontation with them? Am I getting a reward for this? Can I use any items, right? And so I guess the case that I'm making, and I'm really feeling like I'm carrying on now, and those three of you that are still listening because of how much I'm carrying on, I need to stop because I do this when I feel like I'm it's possible that I'm not being heard. But what I want to be heard on is that this is not a failure to create a solo game. I think it is the detriment of uh, of what can happen when you have all the right pieces in place for a solo game, but then you use journaling to stitch those pieces together. Is that it leads to a somewhat haphazard construction, because when you can say, "Oh, well, just journal about it," the subtext there is act like a GM, and whenever you have a gap in mechanics or possibilities or next steps or whatever, just, write it out and figure it out, right? And so what happens is that sometimes people will dip a toe into solo, and more often than not this is the type of experience they'll have, and this is a supplement that I would go to even when I wasn't looking for a journaling experience, because if you look at some journaling games, they're nothing but prompts. And so I might look at this one and say, oh, now here's a game. Here's an actual role-playing game. I'm doing skill checks and I have tables and oracles. But fundamentally, it's been smothered by the journaling mechanic. And because of that, we lose a lot of potential, not only in the development of what this game can be and what it can do, but also in the potential to attract people who would be interested in solo role playing. So I'll stop there, and I'm thinking of Pers Holmstrom, and I think there are so many things given the parameters that I'm certain that you got, and your directives, and in terms of what you're trying to do, this is just great. And the biggest lesson that any game designer can take from this right here is note how helpful it is to have repetitive, persistent, and a generative examples offered throughout the instructions here. These examples make this game so much more accessible to people. And a lesson I take for myself is that uh, 10 lines of an example in a box are probably better at teaching someone how to play than like 6 pages of laser focused instructions written in legalese. Okay, so here are, because you don't want to just complain about it if you got nothing to give here. I'm not complaining. I'm just, okay. You get me. We understand each other. Okay. So my thought here is, given everything I've just said, is that we don't have to like stop at we don't have to stop at the journaling thing. Like I think there is, and I'm probably reading into this, but I always feel like, especially even 2 years ago, I mean that's how rapidly things are progressing. Is that our options are either we do something like Iron Sworn, because Iron Sworn is as good as it can get. So we do an Iron Sworn, or we do a 4AD or Caernethalis, right? Like these games that are more procedural, mechanical dungeon delves. And if our game is neither A nor B, we have a journaling game. Okay, and you can kind of put lipstick on it a little bit, and you can add some mechanical things in there and say, hey, why not do a couple skill checks? That sounds fun, huh? But essentially, you have a journaling game plus, and I don't think we have to stop there. I think that we can actually like take Vaesen as it is. We can take it as it was intended and adapt it into solo. And that's what I'm trying to do here. And I could fail, but here's my plan. Okay, here's what I have so far. Let me get my notes. Is everyone glad I brought these cards out? I used them so much. All right, here we go. First things first, character creation. The character creation methods in the core game, good. We just need to beef it up a little bit. Like here's my 8-minute abs 6-week plan for that. Number one, in the core game, you have every character starting with one of their archetype specific talents. Good. Let's also give a general talent. When we're looking, for instance, who I rolled up the other day was in occultist. Oh, I think I passed it. The occultist, name, motivation, trauma, dark secret, relationship, great. Main skill, was stealth, and talents, magic trick. You know what? I ended up not having an occultist. I had a psychiatrist. That's right. Because at first I started rolling up an occultist that I chose, and I said, "Am I really going to be an occultist every time I play a game like this?" All right, so same deal. Let me see how I can. This is gonna. Okay. Main attribute logic, talents army medic, chief physician, emergency medicine. Now, doctor, very nice archetype to start with, and my resources 4 to 6. That's good. And then equipment, doctor's bag, liquor, weak horse, or strong poison, which all of those were pretty helpful. The strong poison can obviously incapacitate, horse for transportation, the medical equipment, not extremely clear, but obviously can offer a medical type bonus. And then I think the liquor can improve your manipulation or your something charisma, etc. Okay, so as far as the talents, that's fine. You pick a talent, but then in terms of general talents, I think you look through these and you say, okay, what do I really need here in solo? So right off the bat, I'm seeing battle experience. You get a +2 to medicine when treating a physical crit injury. Brave, +1 all fear tests. Combat train, that's pretty good. You wear contact lenses? No, probably not. Uh, Even if it's not contact lenses and what it actually is, you already know a certain NPC. Not, could be nice if we had a group game going and we needed a lead or something. I like coward, although that seems like that's going to lead us to not having a lot of plot development, although it could. I definitely like pet, right? Because that's going to give me some sort of companion. I like sixth sense when making investigation tests. You spend extra successes to learn if a Vaesen has been in the area, etc. So you look through these, and two things happen when I look through these. Number one, I say, wow, there are some of these that look great in terms of adding my second talent as a solo player. And then I think maybe some of these shouldn't even be optional. They should be automatically given to any solo player because without them, it would be very hard to play solo. Right off the bat, something like battle experience, rather than making that into one of the talents I could take, maybe I could water it down and say, well, how about this? Gain +1 to medicine when treating a physical critical injury, and I can do it on myself. And I have it sort of this like battlefield grit, right? You know, got to sew up my own leg, fine. Pet, rather than making that a talent, why don't I borrow some of the mechanics from there and add a companion mechanic in the game, uh, like de facto, like anyone who plays solo gets that, okay? But for now, add another talent. Weapon wise, this is a real problem. One of the benefits of playing in group play is that you can be a writer, for instance, okay? So this is a great archetype. I think it's one that people need to, some people who are always like paladin or always barbarian need to stretch themselves a little. And I think these games give us great opportunities to play against type. But a writer can be an awesome asset in a group of 5 players. But if you are trying to do this all alone, then you cannot go through the game with writing utensils being the only weapon you have, right? And so the modification I make there is if your archetype lacks a starting weapon, you can either add knuckle dusters or a pistol to your inventory. And those are both entry level, either ranged or melee weapon, and they're not much, but they allow you to at least hope to get out of a back alley scruff if you need to. These are the kind of things that blockade the possibility of doing a solo supplement like this and instead saying, oh, you know what, there's too much to deal with, and how could a writer possibly survive? Let's just do sort of a journaling type setup instead. No, that's game and watch. Let's play the game. All right. Now, if your archetype already has a starting weapon, like a soldier, I think the investigator has a pistol, the hunter has a rifle and a hunting knife. If they already have a weapon, they can add an additional piece of non-weapon equipment, or they can add a second memento, which again is quite powerful because once a session or twice a session, you can heal a condition with that, which we're definitely going to need as a solo player. Resource minimum. We're going to have a problem if I roll myself up as a vagabond or an occultist, and the way the chips fall is that my resources are 1. I don't have anyone else in my group. I could start stealing, but is that the point of the game? I might do that sometimes. So how do we figure that out? Well, sometimes we figure stuff out by figuring out within the bounds of the narrative. And other times we just say, it's a solo game. We have to just do what we can here. And so I actually have ideas for both those options. If we just want to do it in terms of mathematical balancing and say, like, what is best for this game? What is best for playability? Then here's what I say. You can change the scale of resources so that the person who is the wealthiest person in the game would get a 6. They now get a 7. People below that who got a 5 get a 6. Anyone who got a a 4 or a 5, get a 5, or I'm not, and then the minimum is 3, and just say regardless of what you roll up, the lowest you can get is 3. That's probably the simplest way to do it. The other system that I have created provisionally, I'm still working out the kinks on this, is Uncle Albert. Is to say that every character has an Uncle Albert or whatever, and this is an estranged, or maybe not estranged, but reclusive family member who uh, your whole life has been sending you like an envelope every whatever. It would probably be like every year or month in real life if you had something like this, but it could be, if you're tracking time, you could do it once a week, and you get that free floating capital from Uncle Albert, and you say you got 5 from that your resources are your resources, but every week Uncle Albert sends you a package, and you can add those to any purchases you'd like. But once those free floating capital bonus modifiers are done, they're done. And then you have to wait till next week, right? Companion creation, right? It could be maybe you take a vagabond with you, or maybe you have a trusty steed or something like that. Something for some people like to play solo. They like to roll up a bunch of characters. Some people, they like to play solo and they need additional characters, but they have a hard time managing it. A companion who is a child, or I guess a teenager in this game. I think there's some dark stuff that happens in this game. I don't necessarily know. Whatever your limits are on that, and then or an animal, a dog, right? These are things that allow you to experience the freedom that having a second controller, so to speak, gives you, and also having some opportunities for experiencing externalized dialogue without taking on the full responsibility of managing a second personhood. Okay. Starting equipment, everyone starts with a padded vest. Padded vest is less than the lowest level of armor that's available in the game. The lowest level of armor right now, I think, is light armor. Like a lot of Free League games, it is 3 types of armor, pretty much, like light, medium, heavy, and the lightest armor is +2 to your defense or whatever, and -1 to your agility. So padded vest gives you +1 to your defense and no penalty to agility. And this is just a little something to keep you alive longer. All right, so that's just kind of like details. One of the thing, I'm sorry, 2 of the things that I think would be great to generate ongoing plot developments and ideas. If you've seen any of my previous videos, I really like rumors. Rumors are a way to introduce plot lines that you, as a player, you feel no anxiety about if you can't make them true, right? Because if you were to get something to say like, oh, here's the daily occurrence, and then in your solo play, it goes how it goes. You randomize a lot of stuff, and you reach a point where you're like, well, I know there's supposed to be like an avalanche or something. I can't make that happen. I'm nowhere near. You don't have to worry about that with a rumor, because if it doesn't work out, it's just a rumor. It could be true, not true, partially true. So 2 things. First of all, there is actually a mention in the core rulebook of the Uppsala Gazette, which is a newspaper. And I have actually, for that, developed, if I can find it here, a generator for that. Where'd it go? Oh, boy. Oh, there we go. So this table is going to look like junk, I think, but oh, okay, here we go. So uh, right here we have D66 from the Gazette, and these are total like brain vomit. I was just like flow state writing. I wasn't even writing because with my hand now I was dictating. So these are headlines, and you can think of it as sort of a tabloid paper. And maybe these give you leads. Maybe you can modify them a bit because you're like, oh, wow, that totally fits. I just have to change like the boat thing here into an airship or whatever. And since we're tracking time, we can hand one of these out. Probably with a D66, I'd conserve them a little bit. I wouldn't do them every day. You'd run out pretty quick. But maybe every week you get a headline. And then middle week, I added something that is a bit, I don't want to say like audacious, but every character in Vaesen, every player character has this sight, and this means they're able to see Vaesen. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's an all-encompassing ESP or anything, just that they're close enough to whatever veil is there that they can see these things. Well, I added something called the whisper, and I haven't figured out what triggers it yet. It could be time locked, like the Gazette, or it could be merely, not merely, it could be like some sort of, when some sort of dice roll happens, or when some sort of outcome, you roll doubles sort of thing. And the whisper is like the sight. It could even be part of the sight, but the whisper is you hear something, right? And I made them intentionally very vague, but at the same time, I tried to make them vague in a way that they were like Play-Doh. You could sort of like a horoscope, like you can wrap them around a lot of different things. So look at number 31. The answer lies in something broken. So you hear that, and then you say, okay, so there's you're going along in your day, and well, I don't know of anything broken. And all of a sudden, you are walking down the street in your gameplay, and you hear a child be like, that's not fair. You said that I could play at Tommy's house today. And the mother said, not today. And he said, you promised. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, two neurons in your brain shake hands, and you go, oh, it's not like a broken thing. It's a broken promise. And you follow it, and you talk to the mother. You say, excuse me, I don't know why I'm asking this, but can you tell me anything about anything strange? And she says, we don't see anything strange. Move along. And the child said, well, what about the broom man, mommy? Right? And she says, we're not going to talk about that. And suddenly you've got some info about the broom man, which you could, I don't know what the hell that means. I just came up with that, but you could use any sort of other oracle to generate that. This, I think, provides an ongoing game in a game. And it's one of these things in solo play I believe in very strongly, which is like when you get an input that you don't know what it means, don't be in a hurry. Like just hang out with it and then wait. And sooner or later, something is going to come along because your brain's going to be cooking while you are clacking. And suddenly you're going to go, oh, that's great. Okay, that's exactly what that meant. Anyways, so that's the whisper. Resource management that I talked about, a couple of different options that I thought of with that. The first, like I said, is putting that minimum, that Uncle Albert. The second, I don't really think this is an option. I think that this is a necessity given that this is solo play and I have one player's resources. Like even if I were to set my starting resources at 6, there may be things, especially when we're talking about the headquarters. We're not going to get into that today because this video is over 2 hours, but with the headquarters, maybe I need to get a level of dice rolls for something that I can't get. You know, if I took Uncle Albert's money and added it to my 5 resource die, the thing costs 12. So I think what I would institute with that is a layaway or investment system, meaning that if I want to purchase something that is very expensive and I do a roll for it and I don't get it, say I need 5 and I get a 3, I can choose to leave that investment in there. Now, the penalty for that is my resource number goes down until the following week. And I say, okay, I will invest. And maybe you can choose like 1, 2, or 3. If you got a 3, your resource number goes down to 2 for the rest of the week. But the following week, you already have 3 successes on board. And then you get to roll again to try and reach those 7 or 8 successes. And this time you roll less. This is the only way I can see being able to play in the same puddle as in terms of purchasing power as you would in group play. All resources managed by step dice. Step dice, I think, are the best way to alleviate mental strain. Anything that we can move away from direct accounting. So if you have a pistol, normally the GM would be like, okay, you have to keep count in this fight or whatever. No, just make it a D8 dice, roll. If you don't get a 1 or a 2, stay. If you get a 1 or a 2, step it down to 6, then 4, etc. It's Uncle Alfred I wrote. Okay, so that covers the first 2 things, which would be resource management and character creation. And I think in terms of success, like difficulty, I think it's got to be binary. In solo play, I think we state outright, almost every check in this game requires 1 success. And if something is extremely hard, it's 2. There's going to be too much analysis paralysis if we're constantly doing this thing that's supposed to be done by a GM. There's a reason why a GM does that. The GM is not the player and therefore is insulated, purposefully so, from the feeling of anxiety or urgency about whether or not something can be done. But when the player and the GM are the same person, and if you're a good boy or good girl solo player, you're always going to go, well, I really want this to happen, so I'll make the difficulty 1, and then you roll and you get it, and then you go, oh, yippee, and then you kind of go, but really, that wasn't fair. Like, if I was being fair, I would have made that 2. I should re-roll. And then you re-roll and you fail it, and now you're mad because you don't have the thing. Narrow that. It's either a 1, it's usually a 1, sometimes a 2. Number 2, in terms of conditions, I think you add back in the failure dice. I think that every push does not result in a condition. That would spiral out way too quickly. You don't have other players to help you out and compensate. So you push, but it only adds a condition if you roll a 1. Otherwise, you avoid the condition. You can put some sort of narrative complication in there, but reduce the chances for because otherwise you're gonna be racked with conditions all the time. In terms of fear, I think that if you fail the fear test in the core game, you are terrified and you either run or hide. And we can't really, we could do that, but that is very limiting, right? Because um, we then just have to do an escape test or whatever, and we can get stuck in that loop. And if we're not making that roll, we're just gone. So I think what we do instead is any encounter with something supernatural provokes a fear test. If we are successful, nothing happens. We confront it. And if we are unsuccessful, we have we roll with disadvantage, and we are ambushed. Right, we go last in initiative. Every round we re-roll it, and we try to get our wits about us. And if we succeed, we're back in the game. But if we fail again, we still participate in the round, but we have we roll with disadvantage until we pass that fear test. All right. All right. So the last thing, in the interest of time, I'll kind of just graze over. The fourth thing would be the headquarters management, Castle Gillenkreutz. I did mention some of the things with layaway and how we manage resources. For solo play, I think we have to start with the castle, and we have to roll up 2 improvements that are there from the beginning of the game. That has to be an anchor point. It has to be available to us. It has to almost be as much of a character in the game or a companion as the diner in Seinfeld was. Rules for upgrading need to be simplified. The requirements for maintenance have to be reduced greatly. And I think there is going to be a table that generates weekly events, very much like Forbidden Lands. And a lot of those events should involve the Vaesen. And yes, I understand that how convenient that something with the Vaesen is happening right by my headquarters. Yes, fine. We could justify that in a variety of ways. We could say the headquarters is built on some sort of, cursed or holy land. We can say that it's covering up a portal, whatever it is. Maybe we don't know. Maybe the whole point of our solo campaign is to figure out why this headquarters that was passed down from your uncle Alfred and Albert, why it is such a focus of the Vaesen, and maybe the clues can help us gradually unravel that. Going back to headquarters is functionally a heal and an automatic occurrence, and let me move right into the last one we'll talk about, which is combat and survival. So first off, add Army of One, which allows us to have, which is a Dragonbane heroic talent for solo play. And what it does is it gives us 2 initiative rolls in combat. And I think it's an Army of One asterisk, which means if you are without a companion, you get to pull 2 initiatives. If you're with a companion, you get your companion who can fight with you. Medical rules are already quite complex in the game, so I'm not going to try and summarize those. They're in the GM screen. They're not complex, but there's like 7 different things. Here's the big innovation. I'm calling it the TKO rule. This, I think, is another big reason why they just avoided it altogether, because your character dies, you're going to start over a new campaign. Or they may have not avoided it all. Let me just say that. I might be talking on my ass. They might have just like wanted to make a journaling game. So I'm sorry if I'm being a bit obtuse here, but here's the idea. Rather than being broken, or rather than having to roll on a crit injury, you have a TKO rule, which means that you can be knocked out 3 times. All right. And I haven't quite figured out the system for this yet, but it is the thing that I am, and as far as one can be intrigued by their own ideas. I'm intrigued here of what I could potentially do to develop this a little bit more. First of all, in combat, I want to provide more opportunities for advantage. All right, so this is a relatively minor part of this, but there is a +1 bonus dice for like different environmental advantages or whatever, etc. I want to figure out a system for what I'm calling edge mechanics, which are different daily edge, an edge that you can get. It's sort of like a star in Super Mario Brothers. I'm talking a lot of Nintendo in this episode, but throughout, rather than it being a one-time thing, it's a sort of edge that is the resultant of the exact sort of thing that gives you an edge in IRL, which is nothing. Like some days you're just on. And so all of these are, if you garner enough points, and I'm not sure what these points are, they might be something like sight points or it could be even inspiration, but I'd rather not use that word, but you can get an edge. Furthermore, whenever you are broken, you, rather than going through the whole system and having to figure out how to like have someone administer field first aid, you're knocked out. And this can happen 3 times in the game. And when you're knocked out, you just, whatever was happening isn't happening anymore, and you wake up in your bed. Okay, and you can figure out what it was. Maybe you have a horse that grabbed you by the scruff and threw you on their back. Maybe you have some sort of arcane sigil that is, who knows? It could be a mystery why. But up to 3 times during your campaign, you're knocked out, left for dead, and then somebody found you and brought you back. When you hit that third one, you're playing for keeps, because we can't just do like unlimited continues, because otherwise I've done that before. And of course you can always do that if you want. It's your game. But if there is no ultimate risk, it lightens. There is the unbearable lightness of unlimited continues, I guess you can call it. And so we want there to be some potential for a season-ending injury, but not as high. So we have this TKO rule, and even though it's bad, and even though and some of it you might get a crit injury, or you'll have to at least spend time in bed and heal, and maybe you lose track of the Vaesen. You also get whatever these points are, these edge points or whatever. When you have enough, you can access something in the game that I think is so they're so coy, and I'm very surprised there's not more talk about this. But there is a paragraph in the book called "Player Characters Using Magic," and this is it in terms of PC magic. And it basically says sometimes player characters can get magic. And maybe it comes from like something you find, like a Spiritus or a wand. And then maybe it can be from something else. And as far as the Vaesen go, Vaesen have one of 3 schools of magic: enchantments, curses, and trollcraft. And if you have magic, even though we're not telling you how to get it or what the rules are for it or whatever, then you need to add the skill of magic, which is not one of the 12 skills that's listed. It's this like dangling 13 skill in here. Counts as a slow action. It's pushed with mental conditions, and it requires a ritual or a rhyme. And there's also something about like a rolling magic means you have to roll a 1d6, and these are magic items, which to me seem like more like a single use magic. But basically, you items of power are used by rolling 1d6. On a roll of 1, the item breaks, runs out, or stops working. Magic items are things owned and wielded by Vaesen. So applying the same rules to that, it's kind of like if you miscast a spell or whatever. So we can create a different ladder of risk and reward for this. But I'm thinking when you reach a certain amount of whatever these points are, your sight evolves. And this would have to be paced out so that it does not happen until you're several sessions into your campaign. But I think it's in some sort of trauma, some sort of, or cumulative traumas, which could, something miraculous happens, anytime something horrible happens, you gain these points. Win, lose, or draw, it just has to be severe occurrences. And these points eventually build up this subconscious momentum. And it's almost like in Marvel 616, where like Deadpool, you torture him enough and then the mutant power emerges. This would be like the more advanced manifestation of the sight emerges. And at that point, you determine which of the 3 schools of magic you develop, and using the same system for leveling skills and leveling talents, you can also begin to add different spells, maybe not too much, but like up to 3. All right. If you use these mechanics for generating events, rumors, headlines, if you use the tools available in Thursday's Child for NPCs, you could even use the clues. You develop a contract system, where something is that, you have the invitation and the quest giver and everything, but there's some sort of benefit to that. It could be used to provide improvements to your headquarters. You could get more information. You could get higher access. You could meet more important people, whatever it is. There's a gameplay loop here in this game that has not been fully unlocked in the solo supplement as it stands, or at least it's a bit obfuscated, a bit subject to a bit of journaling type mystification. So obviously a little bit of work to do, but I'm curious about your thoughts on any of this. Obviously I did not expect a 2.5 hour video, but I guess Vaesen deserves it. Let me know what you think. If you got to the end of the video here, just make sure your comment has something that refers to like a slice of pie. I'm delirious. I got to go to bed. Okay, thanks everybody. That'll do.